In a moment, I'm going to ask Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya to come to the stage and receive an award that she should have received, which we bestowed during the COVID period, but she couldn't accept in person. But I have to make a little bit of a confession, first of all, because as you all know, the regime in Belarus seems almost immovable. But as a young reporter back in the early 90s, I was one of the very few correspondents who was actually covering Belarus. And I got very interested in the politics of Belarus and very frustrated by what seemed to me to be the stagnation of this potentially very promising country. And so I went down to Minsk to cover the 1994 Belarusian presidential election, not knowing that this was actually going to be the last free election in Belarus. And I feel that it's one of the most important and tragic mistakes of my journalistic life, that I thought that things were so bad under the then leader of Belarus, Vyacheslav Kebic, that this kind of rough diamond, this guy who'd run a chicken farm, who ran an anti-corruption campaign, I thought he could be better. I thought he couldn't be worse. And so I'm afraid The Economist kind of endorsed Alexander Lukashenko in the 1994 presidential election. And it wasn't a full-throated endorsement, but if I remember right, it said something like, Belarusians are hungry for a change, and Mr. Lukashenko seems to offer it. So there you are. I'm really sorry about that. I'm not quite sure that it was the Economist endorsement that swung it, because as far as I knew, we only had about 3 subscribers in Belarus at the time. But anyway, for what it's worth, Sviatlana, I'm really, really sorry about that. But we are really pleased to have you here. You are our 2022 Freedom Fighter Awardee, awarded on behalf of all the brave women of Belarus. We saw you flooding the streets in the red, white, red flags that epitomize the struggle of Belarusians for freedom and their rejection of that regime that's been there for too long. I also feel that you exemplify the spirit of 1863, that great phrase of "for your freedom and ours," that united Belarusians, Ukrainians, Poles, Lithuanians and Russians against the autocracy of the time. So please join me in welcoming on stage our 2022 Freedom Fighter awardee, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, who should be President of Belarus.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas, for your kind words and telling, for those who don't know anything about Belarus, something about my wonderful country. So, dear Excellencies, guests, friends, and amazing CEPA team who gathered all us here today. It's both an honor and privilege to stand on this stage. Today we celebrate heroes of democracy, people who know no rest, and who embody values that we stand for and cherish so much: freedom and peace, justice and human rights. Today we celebrate leaders who are on the front line of the global fight for democracy. And if you ask me to pick the dream team for freedom fighters, these 5 will be on the list. Minister Landsbergis, a true friend and a leader who makes dictators tremble. First Lady Olena Zelenska, courageously standing by her husband and by Ukrainian people, who is my personal inspiration. Congressman Turner, who led the assembly of the largest military alliances of democracies, or Congressman McCall, furiously advocating for Ukraine. And of course, Vladimir Kara-Murza, a fearless and invincible critic of Putin's regime. He just got out of prison and immediately rushed back to fight. So my sincere appreciation to you, Vladimir, and your wonderful wife, Evgenia. You know, yesterday at the UN General Assembly on the sidelines and on the stage, I heard a lot about fatigue. Fatigue of war, fatigue of Putin, fatigue of Lukashenko, you know, and I heard it so often that at the end, I felt fatigue of fatigue. What fatigue we are talking about? Tell about fatigue to the Ukrainian soldiers in cold trenches. Tell about fatigue to a father who lost his entire family because of Russian shelling. Tell about fatigue to Belarusian political prisoners who are dying, literally, in Lukashenko's prison. Tell about fatigue to 77-year-old Nina Baginskaya, who every day takes to the streets with our national flag. She gets arrested, released, sews a new flag overnight, and goes out again. Tell about fatigue to hundreds of thousands of Belarusians who lost homes, forced into exile, but it didn't break their spirit, and they continue to fight. All of them don't have right for fatigue. Neither do we. You know, this fatigue comes from the fact that we don't know when it will end, when Ukraine wins, when the Lukashenko regime collapses. But sometimes we can't know when, and all we should do is just bring this moment closer. We must do it because it is right. I was thinking about what unites today's laureates. They all have immunity to fatigue, and they have intolerance to dictatorship and to injustice. When you fight against tyranny, you have no rights for time's out or personal comfort. This struggle requires sacrifice, consistency, and bravery, because any doubts, any hesitations are seen by dictators as weakness. Therefore, we must continue to exert pressure on dictators, on Lukashenko and Putin. For each crime, for each broken faith, they must pay the price. We must support all those who are on the front lines. We must support those who are in prisons. We also must understand no war, no fight cannot be won without allies. This fight needs allies, and many of them are in this room today. It needs allies like the United States of America. You are a beacon of hope for many nations. So don't stop standing for what is right. Don't stop supporting Ukraine, because it's not just their war. It is our common fight for freedom. Don't stop supporting Belarus, because tyranny is contagious. If not contained, it spills over. We must reject the very thought that tyrants can be appeased or can be re-educated. Dictators will not stop until we stop them. And please keep in mind, supporting Ukraine and supporting Belarus is not a charity. It's investment into peace and security globally. So, dear friends, finally, I want to share with you one thing. In a month, you will have presidential elections, free and fair, something that Belarusians didn't have in the last 30 years. And I'm so jealous of Americans. Believe me, it's such a luxury not to know who will be your next president. So thank you for your support, for your solidarity with Belarus and Ukraine. The path for freedom might be very long and difficult, but it's the only path worth walking. So let's walk this path together. God bless America. Glory to Ukraine. Long live Belarus.
Well, what wonderful, inspiring words from Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, and let's hope the day comes soon when we can welcome her here to Washington as the leader of a free country.